Imagine a story buried so deep, so dangerous to the people in power, it was locked away for nearly 2,000 years. This story is not merely a myth, not a legend. It is a genuine manuscript. The manuscript was fragile, faded, and written in a dead language. Its words never meant to be heard again. Inside that forgotten gospel, the world's most hated villain isn't a traitor. He's a chosen one, a confidant. He was the only disciple who truly understood what was happening. His name is Judas, and the God everyone thought they were praying to, the creator of heaven and earth, is described as a blood-stained imposter. Not divine, not loving it, a broken being that traps souls and bodies and calls it creation. That gospel and the gospel of Judas. It appeared like a ghost from the desert, found by accident, nearly destroyed by neglect, and dismissed as heresy by the early church. But inside its brittle pages is a vision of a universe so unsettling. It makes every Sunday sermon feel like a bedtime story told to keep the truth away. In this gospel, Jesus doesn't act like a savior preparing to die. He laughs. He laughs not kindly, but with pity. He looks at his other disciples and sees only ignorance. He speaks in riddles, not parables. He refuses to bless their prayers and tells Judas alone the real secret. This world is a mistake. The skies, seas, and stars were made by a cosmic error who thought he was God. This being was considered a lower power. This God created flesh to trap spirit. Souls once free and divine are now locked inside human bodies, bound to pain, time, and death. He was the one Jesus needed to break free. He was not a betrayer, but rather a liberator. He was the only one brave enough to help Jesus escape his earthly shell. This soul was entrusted with the most terrifying knowledge of all. The people who followed this version of Jesus were called Gnostics. They didn't gather in temples. They didn't preach to crowds. They speak secrets to those ready to hear. To them, salvation wasn't won through blood or belief, but through hidden truth passed from one awakened soul to another. In their view, the world was a prison of illusions. They believed that every rule, ritual, and God, glorified in gold and marble, were all part of a false reality. They believed in a hidden realm of light beyond matter, where the true Creator lived in silence, untouched by suffering. The Gospel of Judas echoes this worldview like a siren from the deep. It speaks of false angels, violent archons, and divine sparks scattered among humanity. It warns that worshiping the wrong God would lead to destruction, not salvation. And yet, it offers no comfort, only revelation. The betrayal of Jesus becomes a sacred task. They tell Judas that he must sacrifice the man who bears me. Not kill a man, but free a divine being from its human cage. This was an act of both darkness and holiness. This gospel remained secret for centuries. Early church leaders called it blasphemy. They feared what it might mean for the story they were building, one of obedience, suffering, and submission to divine authority. This was a God who demanded love, even in the face of fear. He is a God who establishes kingdoms and punishes doubt. But the gospel doesn't flinch. It paints that God as a fool, ruling over a broken system made of flesh and punishment. The creator of the world was not motivated by love, but rather by pride and ignorance. What is the fate of those who have faith in him? They are trapped in endless cycles of sin and salvation, never seeing the truth behind the curtain. When we think of Judas Iscariot, the image of betrayal comes rushing in. He's the disciple who sold out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. In the Gospels, Judas is the one who betrayed Jesus by kissing him in the garden to signal his arrest. At this moment, the authorities hand over Jesus for his crucifixion. While the divine plan views Judas' actions as essential, his portrayal is far from flattering. Remember to join our community by subscribing to this channel. In these Gospels, Judas' motivation remains somewhat unclear, but there are different explanations. Some suggest that he was motivated by money. After all, 30 pieces of silver is the price of his betrayal in the Gospel of Matthew. Others point to supernatural forces, like in the Gospel of Luke, where it's said that Satan entered Judas, pushing him to act. The Gospel of John goes even further, calling Judas a devil from the start. The common thread in these stories is that Judas' actions are portrayed as an inevitable part of God's will, a necessary evil that would lead to Jesus' crucifixion and, ultimately, salvation for humankind. But the Judas of the canonical Gospels is not a hero. He's an antagonist, a symbol of treachery, and a man who ends his life in despair, feeling guilty for what he has done. But then, there's the Gospel of Judas, an ancient text that flips this story upside down. In this lost gospel, Judas is not the villain. He is the instrument of Jesus' liberation. This text presents a radically different version of events, one in which Judas' betrayal is not a tragic mistake, but an act of obedience, as strange as that may sound. The Gospel of Judas portrays a Jesus who tells Judas that his role in the betrayal is necessary for the divine plan to unfold. He, as the closest disciple to Jesus, is the only one who understands the true nature of the world. While the other disciples remain trapped in their misunderstandings of Jesus' message, Judas grasps the bigger picture. In this case, betrayal is a necessary step in Jesus' mission to escape the physical world and return to the spiritual realm. People portray him as someone who comprehends the true essence of the world. He knows that the material world, with its suffering and imperfection, is a creation of a false god, a god who traps souls in human bodies. By betraying Jesus, Judas helps the divine spark inside him escape this material prison, setting Jesus free from his earthly body. Far from being a villain, Judas becomes an essential figure in Jesus' cosmic journey. The differences between the canonical Gospels and the Gospel of Judas are not just theological curiosities. They're deeply significant. If we accept the Gospel as offering a true version of events, it radically shifts our understanding of key themes like betrayal, divine will, and salvation. In the Bible, the betrayal is tragic, even though it is necessary for Jesus' death and resurrection. Judas is the villain who unwittingly serves the divine plan. However, in the Gospel, Jesus does not instigate betrayal. Rather, he actively desires it. Jesus chooses Judas to fulfill a necessary role in the grand cosmic drama. The story challenges the idea that betrayal is always a sin or a mistake, suggesting instead that sometimes, for greater purposes, even acts of treachery might be part of a divine design. In traditional Christianity, salvation comes through the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, a self-sacrifice that redeems the sins of the world. But in the Gospel of Judas, salvation is not about Jesus suffering and dying to save humanity. It's about the escape of the divine soul from the corrupt, material world. His betrayal becomes a pivotal moment in helping Jesus transcend his earthly prison and return to his true spiritual form. Within the traditional Gospels, Judas stands alone as the disciple who fails. Despite walking with Jesus, listening to his teachings, and witnessing his miracles, he ultimately turns away. When he hands Jesus over to the authorities, it's seen as the most shameful act in the New Testament. Even Judas himself is overcome with guilt. He returns the silver coins and dies by suicide, a broken man swallowed by regret. In the ancient text discovered in the Egyptian desert, the story takes a shocking turn. Judas doesn't act in secrecy, he acts with knowledge. He doesn't betray Jesus to hurt him. He does it because Jesus tells him to. The betrayal becomes a kind of sacred mission. Jesus says that by handing him over, Judas will allow him to shed his mortal body and return to the spiritual realm. That leads in opposite directions. In one, shame consumes Judas, causing him to die in despair. In the other, he becomes a secret hero, doing what no one else had the courage to do. In the Gospel of Judas, this idea takes on cosmic weight. Judas helps Jesus return to the divine realm. Without his action, Jesus stays bound to the material world. What the other disciples condemn as treason, Jesus sees as necessary. However, Jesus still excludes Judas. Jesus does not grant him entry into the eternal house he describes. His role is essential but also tragic. He fulfills his responsibilities, albeit at a price. The gospel doesn't give Judas a happy ending. Judas does not experience traditional salvation. He is used, not in a cruel way, but as a crucial component of a spiritual machine far larger than himself. His reward isn't paradise. It's the terrible weight of understanding. This is what makes the Gospel of Judas so haunting. It doesn't just rewrite the story. It injects it with complexity and moral ambiguity. Judas doesn't fall because of greed. He doesn't act from hate. He does what he must because he sees what others can't. In this version of events, redemption isn't about forgiveness. It's about awareness. It's not a given. It's a realization. Judas doesn't repent. He doesn't beg. He simply acts, knowing full well what it will cost him. And Jesus thanks him. In the Gnostic view, the physical world is not a beautiful creation of a loving deity. It's a cage. Gnostics taught that long ago, a perfect and invisible divine realm existed beyond space and time. It was a place of light, purity, and harmony, populated by spiritual beings far beyond human comprehension. One of these divine beings, a lesser entity far from the original source, broke the balance. This being, sometimes called Yaldabaoth, Saklas, or simply the false god, created the physical universe. This creation was not motivated by love, but rather by arrogance. He believed himself to be the ultimate power, unaware that he was only a fragment of the real thing. He shaped the earth, the heavens, and everything in them, including humanity. But he didn't make people in the image of the true divine. He trapped fragments of spiritual light in flesh. He sealed pure souls inside bodies of blood and bone. And so, the world we live in, its suffering, decay, pain, and death, is not a blessing. It's a prison. Are you enjoying the story? Support our channel by clicking the subscribe button. According to Gnostic tradition, not everyone is blind to this cosmic trick. Within certain people, a fragment of the true divine source still glows. This is a spark of genuine light. However, this spark lacks direction. It doesn't know how to return home. The false god, who demands worship and obedience, has buried it under ignorance and lies. The only way out isn't through faith or ritual, it's through revelation. This is achieved through the acquisition of hidden knowledge, through gnosis. In this worldview, Jesus is not the savior in the traditional sense. He doesn't serve as a sacrifice to atone for sin. He's a being from the true realm of light, an emissary of the higher world. He comes into this false creation not to fix it, but to free those who are ready. His teachings in the Gnostic texts are full of riddles, strange images, and cryptic sayings. These teachings are not intended for everyone. Only those with the spark inside will hear the message beneath the words. In the Gospel of Judas, Jesus mostly talks to Judas, not crowds. He gives him the keys to a truth the others aren't ready to face. For the Gnostics, even nature was a trick. The seasons, the stars, and the cycle of life and death were not indications of a wise creator. They were the mechanisms of a trap. The archons, ruling forces created by the false god, govern everything from physical desire to societal systems. They keep humanity distracted, blind, and busy. The entire system aims to lull the soul into slumber. Gnosticism didn't try to repair the world. Gnosticism rejected the world. It offered no comfort, no political solution, no future paradise. It offered only escape, one soul at a time. This is the gravity behind the Gospel of Judas. It's not just an alternate gospel. It's a message from an underground spiritual resistance. This message serves as a guide for individuals who experience a sense of alienation within their own physical form. This map serves as a cautionary tale for individuals who perceive the world to be more complex than it appears. A long time ago, there was a belief system that tried to explain why the world feels so broken. The belief system aimed to elucidate the reasons behind human suffering, war, and the occurrence of both positive and negative events in the lives of individuals. Manichaeism, this belief system, taught that everything in existence stems from a battle between two great forces, light and darkness. A man named Mani, who lived in the 3rd century in what is now Iran, created Manichaeism. Mani wasn't just making up stories. He was deeply influenced by other religions and ideas of the time, especially a strange and powerful system called Gnosticism. In Manichaeism, the universe is like a giant battlefield. On one side is the kingdom of light, filled with goodness, peace, and spirit. On the other side is the kingdom of darkness, full of chaos, greed, and matter. These two realms have always been in conflict. There wasn't a moment of peace that was shattered. This war has been going on forever. He said our world is the result of dark forces invading the light. When the kingdom of darkness attacked, parts of the light were trapped inside physical matter. This implies that darkness permeates everything, including our bodies, the earth, and even time itself. But inside every person is a tiny spark of light, a piece of the original pure realm. Manichaeism believed that the world we live in is not just flawed, it's deeply wrong. It's the result of an invasion. Our bodies get sick, grow old, and die. People do terrible things to each other. Desires and instincts pull us into suffering. Mani and his followers believed that all of their suffering came from the forces of darkness. So, they rejected the physical world. They didn't see it as something to enjoy or improve. They saw it as something to escape. This is where Manichaeism really connects to Gnostic thinking. Both systems believed that the material universe isn't where we belong. Instead of worshiping the God who made the earth, they believed the real God was far away, pure spirit, untouched by the pain of matter. For the Manichaeans, the goal of life was to return to that realm of light. But this could only happen by resisting the physical world and uncovering deep spiritual truth. Even though Manichaeism faded over 1,000 years ago, its ideas never fully disappeared. In fact, they've quietly slipped into many modern spiritual paths, even if the people following them don't know it. Today, in movements often grouped under the New Age or modern spiritualism, you can find beliefs that feel very familiar to Mani. Many of these modern groups teach similar beliefs. The material world is a lower form of reality. The human soul is eternal and divine, trapped in a temporary body. The universe is filled with hidden knowledge, and only through awakening or spiritual insight can we return to a higher realm. Some modern groups' acceptance of the Gospel of Judas is a surprising link between ancient and modern spiritual thought. Whether through ancient Manichaeans or modern seekers of truth, the same theme comes up again and again. The idea that reality is not what it seems. The idea that light and darkness are not just symbols, but real forces battling all around us and inside us is a recurring theme. Manichaeism may be gone as an organized religion, but its heartbeat still echoes in every movement that questions the nature of the physical world. It lives in every path that sees spirit as more real than matter. Every gospel, whether hidden, burned, or buried due to its perceived danger, carries its message. Long before churches stood tall and doctrines were carved into stone, another version of the story was being whispered. The story was not preserved in scrolls, but rather buried in the dirt, worn by time, and nearly forgotten. That story belonged to Judas, the one disciple condemned for eternity, yet possibly the only one who truly understood what was happening. The Gospel of Judas, lost for nearly 2,000 years, speaks with a voice no one expected. It reveals not a traitor, but a chosen figure. He is not a betrayer, but a keeper of knowledge too dangerous for the world around him. In this version, Judas is the key to a plan far older and stranger than any traditional gospel dares to admit. The version of Jesus within these pages doesn't plead or suffer to save others. He doesn't beg for faith or glorify pain. Instead, he teaches Judas in secret, preparing him for a final act that would free the divine spark trapped within his body. In this interpretation, the crucifixion represents an escape from a world based on falsehoods, not a sacrifice. The ancient movement that inspired this gospel had a name: Gnosticism. Its followers believed that the material world, with its suffering and imperfection, wasn't made by a benevolent creator, but by a lesser force. They believed that a blind and arrogant being had mistaken himself for God. Trapped inside this creation, pieces of divine light were scattered, hidden within human souls. These fragments longed to return to the true source, a realm beyond form, untouched by time or decay. For the Gnostics, salvation didn't come through worship or obedience. It came through awareness, through awakening. They gained knowledge that most people would never be able to comprehend. In their eyes, the world was a prison made to look like paradise. Every system, rule, and ritual served as a chain to lull souls into slumber. Enjoying this story? Click the Super Thanks button. Consider making a donation. Your support helps us keep this content alive and freely available to you and everyone who loves discovering what time is kept hidden. Manichaeism, another powerful current in early spirituality, drew deeply from Gnostic thought. It spoke of a never-ending war between light and darkness, two eternal forces locked in a cosmic struggle. According to this view, Earth was a battlefield, and human beings carried that conflict within them. Every person became a vessel of both realms, containing sparks of light caught in flesh made from shadow. This dualistic vision of reality was too much for the rising orthodox powers of the ancient world. The idea that the physical universe was corrupt, that its God was false, and that true freedom lay in hidden knowledge threatened everything the early church was building. Therefore, they labeled Gnostic writings as heretical, destroyed them, and erased them from history wherever they could. But truth has a way of surviving in silence. Fragments of these lost beliefs remained buried in ancient libraries, sealed in jars, hidden in caves, and eventually rediscovered. And as they resurfaced, so did the questions they carried, not with loud claims, but with quiet weight. They did not do so with rebellion, but rather with revelation. In modern times, echoes of these ancient ideas have returned under new names. Within movements labeled as New Age or Modern Spiritualism, the core beliefs of Gnosticism and Manichaeism have taken fresh forms. Many seekers now speak of awakening, of the illusion of the material world, of the divine within. They seek deeper meanings in forgotten texts, in dreams, in symbols that defy easy explanation. For some of these groups, Judas is no longer a symbol of betrayal, but of insight. He represents the soul that sees what others cannot, the one who acts when no one else understands, the one who carries the weight of knowledge even when it costs everything. In these circles, the Gospel of Judas becomes more than a book. It becomes a mirror. It becomes a mirror, not a reflection of what is, but a reflection of what might lie beneath the surface of belief. It speaks to the restlessness that lives in quiet hearts. It speaks to the sense that the world we've inherited is incomplete. Thanks for watching. Join our community by subscribing to this channel. Until the next video.